of Hidden Time Capsules. My name is Elyse Waterman. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Today we have a really exciting guest named Michael, another Michael, different Michael than last week, and he's going to be telling us all about his family time capsule. He's joining us today, and as always, I'm just going to hop right into it. All of our time capsule guests have, graciously submitted their photos to the International Time Capsule Society. They are historic. They've registered it on our map through our library system, and we go over their submission, what makes their time capsule unique and special, and we just bombard them with questions from us and the audience. So I'm going to bring Michael on, and he's going to introduce himself, and we're going to hop right into it. So 1 second, bear with me. Ooh. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Hi, Elyse. Great to be with you today.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on.
of course. I'm very excited to hop right into this conversation. And for those of the audience members who don't know you, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself for everyone to get a better sense of who you are?
Sure. My name is Michael Sommars. I was born in Godfrey, Illinois, and grew up in the Alton, Illinois area. That's about 40 miles northeast of St. Louis. And right now I live in a little town called Forestdale, Missouri. It's about 40 miles west of St. Louis. I live here with my wife and daughter, my wife Trina, my daughter Hannah, and 3 cats and 1 hamster. So I'm an electrical engineer by degree, work as an automation engineering manager right now in the St. Louis area. I've been interested in time capsules. I was trying to think back when I started getting interested in time capsules, and it must be since I was a little boy. I don't know how or why, but it's always been something that fascinated me. I've also been interested in astronomy since I was 9 years old when I was in 4th grade. And so the time capsule that I entombed or created, I wanted to do it to coincide with the total eclipse of August 2017.
Okay.
So I kind of tied the time capsule with my interest in astronomy. And so I had a very fixed date, August 21st of 2017. It had to be done and ready to go in the ground. So that's kind of where it came from. And we were very fortunate. Our house is in the path of totality. So we had a big eclipse party with 25 people here. And then after we watched the eclipse, we entombed the time capsule. So it's kind of a big party to do that.
Wow. Yeah. For those of our audience members who aren't completely aware, these aspects of astronomy, can you explain what that means? It sounds really cool.
Well, the total solar eclipse, that was when the moon passes in front of the sun. And it was a big deal in the United States because it was visible across most of the country from Oregon, I think, all the way to South Carolina. And it passed the path of totality, passed right through the St. Louis area. And we had I think it was about 1 minute and 40 seconds of totality in our backyard. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
And it was the first total solar eclipse I had ever seen, and most of my family, I think, and pretty much all of my friends had ever seen. So it was kind of a big deal that day.
Yeah, I love that. And you coincided the opening date with that event?
Yes. Yeah. So the opening date then is the date of the next solar eclipse visible from our backyard, which is June 3rd of 2505. So it's 487 years from the date of entombment. It wasn't my choice. It was kind of Mother Nature kind of threw that at
Yeah.
me, and I had to deal with it. I would have preferred to have it more like a year, 100 years, maybe 200 years, something a little more realistic. 500 years is a long time for a time capsule, and I don't know if many that are longer than that. I think the crypt of civilization is 8,000 years, so that's way longer. But I looked it up, and there was maybe one other one that was entombed on a solar eclipse and to be opened at the next eclipse at that location. That's in Hawaii.
Oh,
So this was it's not the first one, but it's something that I wanted to do just to kind of commemorate the eclipses, and so that's what we went with.
yeah, I love that. Well, you are the first guest who's had the longest duration between your, creation of the time capsule and the opening date. So that's notable. I feel like every time we have a guest on here, there's a first. But yeah, that's really great. And, I'm looking at your time capsule on this side. I will pull it up in a little bit. But can you tell the audience, why is this time capsule meaningful to you? Obviously, the astronomy point with the timing and
Yeah.
the dates, but the contents of it and the total creation of it. Why was this whole thing meaningful to you?
So my Aunt Mary on my father's side got me interested in the family history back in the early 90s. And it was at my sister's wedding in 1994 that my cousin Steve and I decided to collaborate on a family history project to write a family history book. And in doing so, we collected all the information our Aunt Mary had, and we compiled it into a database, and we collected all the records, and we scanned documents. We extended the family history way back farther than she ever had, and added relatives that she didn't even know about. And in the process of working on this family history project, I realized that most of my ancestors are just names and dates, and we don't know really much about them at all. And it kind of bugged me. It made me realize that when 200 years down the road, nobody's going to know who I am or what my aspirations and dreams were, or what I thought about, or who I was, or what my family was like. They're not going to know any of that. So part of the reason we decided to do this time capsule, it was very much a family project. My wife and daughter and I worked on it from April 2017 all the way through August of 2017. Wow. And it included, we probably started about a year before that, just planning. So, but my goal was to capture some of who we are and get that down and store it in a time capsule so that my descendants, hopefully, 500 years from now, will have some idea of who we were, what our dreams were, what our aspirations were, and who we were as people, rather than just names and dates. And so that was the big motivation behind why we did it.
Yeah, I love that. I totally agree. I think doing the family research over COVID, I noticed that all I had really were just names and, maybe a blurry pic here or there, but no real context as to who the person was, their mannerisms, the way they laughed, these human characteristics were kind of overshadowed by just flat media and lifeless, words that I didn't really understand. So I totally understand that. I think it's such a meaningful thing to do, to put together a time capsule. And obviously, they're very fascinating for a lot of people. I'm not sure if you are aware, but after COVID, a lot of people were inside and they were thinking about their lives and their families. And family history actually became the U.S.'s second hobby. So it just kind of skyrocketed up. There was so much interest in it. Obviously, the fact that you had been putting this together since 2016 is really interesting because you were kind of ahead of the game on the trends. But now everyone's in your position making time capsules. So, have you had any media interest about this? Have you spoken to your loved ones besides just the family that were involved about this time capsule and your journey making it?
Well, everybody in the family, I come from a family of 5 siblings or 5 children. I'm the 4th of 5, and they all contributed to the time capsule. They contributed biographies that we included. But as far as media interest, like you said earlier, I've registered this with the International Time Capsule Society, and through them, I was put in contact with a documentary filmmaker who's working on a documentary about time capsules, and I submitted a whole bunch of media, photographs, and video and so forth to the filmmaker. So hopefully, our time capsule will be included in his documentary.
Yeah, that's Frank Heath. For those of our audience members who are not aware, he's a New York City artist and filmmaker, and he is doing a documentary about time capsules. So he asked, members of the International Time Capsule Society to submit their photos to get a more genuine feel when he was putting all this digital media assets into his documentary. So you'll definitely be in there. I think it's really cool that you were able to insert, your family pictures, which I'm going to pull up shortly. And I want to talk about what you chose to put into the time capsule. So I'm going to put you on the screen and my screen. But while we do that, could you tell the audience just what you put into the time capsule? We'll just start from the top, I guess.
You dropped out just a little bit. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to pull up your time capsule record. And I'd love to talk about, what you put into your time capsule. So first, we'll look up your name. So for those of the listeners, when you do register a time capsule through the International Time Capsule Society, you get a library record, and that's on the WorldCat. It's the largest global database. So I'm just putting in his first and last name, Michael Sommars, and then NotForgotten. Hopefully his family's record will show up. Here it is. It's number 1, Sommars family, which is pretty good because his last name is I feel like I know a lot of Sommars.
It's an unusual spelling. There's not many people spell it that way.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right. So his record comes up here, and we're just gonna click view online so we can see what it looks like. But this is your library record, and then I have all of your other digital media pulled up on the other side. So this is your opening date, and it says it's the contribution to the future. The opening date was specified because it's the date of the next total solar eclipse visible from this location. So we've talked about that earlier, and now I want to kind of hop into the content. So do you remember, what you put in the time capsule? And
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I documented everything. I photographed everything that we included, and what I wanted to include was kind of a snapshot of 2017, what society was like during that time. And like one of your previous guests, I think his name was Corey Johnson. I listened to his podcast that you did a couple weeks ago in New Orleans. And like him, I wrote a manifest, and I kind of talked about what I thought was important in society today. And I also included a biography, a pretty lengthy biography about me and my family, and what our lives are like. And so I wrote it with the idea that somebody might find it interesting 500 years from now when they open the time capsule.
Yeah.
But I wanted to include things that were unusual or that I thought would not be around in 500 years. So one of the things I included that I'm not sure anybody has ever included was I included samples of crude oil. I wrote away to this company that where you can buy crude oil samples, and they sent me three samples. One was from Alberta, Canada. One was from I think East Texas, and one was from Iraq. So I included those in the time capsule. They came in glass vials, and I put those inside archival plastic bags, and then put the whole plastic bag inside of a glass jar, a sealed glass jar. Then I included the glass jar inside another archival plastic bag because I absolutely did not want those leaking out. That would have made a mess of things. So, and then I also included, along with those, the petroleum distillates of those crude oil samples. So I included samples of kerosene, gasoline, and diesel fuel, I think it was. So those are some kind of unusual things. I just don't think they're going to be around in 500 years. So I think anybody opening the time capsule might find those interesting. I think we're pretty well going to be off of oil and petroleum products by then, hopefully. So that was some of the more some of the stranger things I think that I've heard anybody ever put in a time capsule. Before I included an iPhone, but unlike him, I took the battery out because I read where batteries will corrode over time, and the last thing you want is the battery to corrode and contaminate your time capsule. So and being an engineer, I included instructions on what the power requirements are for the iPhone, so that some future society, will, hopefully they'll have the technology to be able to power on the iPhone and get into it and see what it was like. And then I also included things like, let me just go down the list. I've got a whole bunch of stuff. I included a whole bunch of paper. I included about 6 inches of paper, stacked up. Because of all the records I've ever looked at with family history research, the paper records are the ones that are usually preserved the best. And I can guarantee you that the paper records are going to be around at least 100 years, hopefully longer. But some of the digital media that I included, it's questionable whether or not it'll retain the data that long. And one of the things I did as part of my research on what to include was I looked up, best ways of preserving artifacts to include in a time capsule. And there's just not a whole lot out there for anything looking at 500 years. It's anybody's best guess as to how you can preserve artifacts that long. It's just, there's no documentation on it. So I did the best I could. I included ink pens, pencils, writing utensils. I included an entire computer motherboard. I included a Raspberry Pi, not the kind you eat, but the kind that hobbyists play with, the little microcomputer about the size of a deck of cards. I included a United States flag. I think it was a 5x7 or 4x6 flag. I included a King James Bible. That was a gift from or a contribution from my mother and father-in-law. I included a Rubik's Cube. I included postage stamps. I don't think post office is going to be in existence in 500 years. I'm pretty sure of that.
Probably not.
I included a deck of playing cards, a set of dice, a fidget spinner. That was my daughter's contribution. She's 10 years old.
Yep, love that.
I included a set of emoji pins. Those were popular a few years ago. I included a baseball, a golf ball. I also included, this was my wife's contribution, I included a honeybee life cycle display encased in acrylic, mainly because, there's the current threat to honeybees around the world. That they're seeing a decline, and I just thought it would be a good thing to include. I also included a printed and bound list of endangered species from 2017. I included a book, H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. I thought that was appropriate. Included a movie, The Shawshank Redemption. That's one of the highest rated IMDb movies of all time. Wow. I also included a music CD, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. That's generally regarded as one of the greatest albums of all time. I included, here's an unusual one. I included the entire Wikipedia, including images.
How do you do
all
that?
All of Wikipedia. Well, it turns out you can download it. And so I downloaded it, and it included a reader so that somebody in the future could use that reader to read Wikipedia, and along with all the images. And it surprised me. It was only about 250 gigabytes, so about a quarter of a terabyte of data. Wow. It completely surprised me that you could download it and it'd be that small. So I put all this information. I also included I don't know if you remember, but might be before your time, but with my interest in astronomy and space and all that, the Voyager spacecraft from the late 70s had a golden record included on it that included sounds from Earth and images of Earth and all kinds of other things. And I included the entire contents of that golden record in my time capsule.
Wow.
I included a bunch of historic documents, the Magna Carta, the United States Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Emancipation Proclamation, thousands of digital photos that I have, basically our entire digital footprint. I have about 1.5 terabytes of data on a storage drive here at home, and I included all of that on a USB drive. I think it was about a 2 terabyte USB drive. It was pretty crammed full once I put the Wikipedia on there as well. And I also printed out the entire USB 3.0 technical specifications so that if anybody in the future wants to access that USB drive, they have the entire technical specification on how to recreate something that can access that drive.
Oh, okay. So when they open it, if we're way in the future and no one knows what a USB is, it's practically prehistoric. They're going to go,
right.
How we make what to plug it into.
Assuming the magnetic bits on the drive are still accessible, they'll have the technical know-how for how to access it.
Yeah, but if worse comes to worse and they can't access any of the data on the USB, you've provided a lot like physical assets as well, so that you're getting some sort of impression, right?
Yes, I also included 17 magazines, kind of a cross section from the United States around the world. I included 7 newspapers, including I think one from Great Britain, maybe the Times of London, just to give kind of a in case most of the magnetic media, the USB drive and so forth, was not accessible, that they'd have at least some printed media that hopefully will survive.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I love what you put in. It feels like you were trying to take a historical snapshot of where we are right now in the country.
Exactly.
Yeah, and make sure that people in the future, they look back and they go, oh wow, they used crude oil, they used this, and they the flag's there, which is really great. I think patriotism is slowly dying out, so maybe in the future, people will feel differently. Who knows? 500 years is a considerable amount of time. I have no idea what we'll be. But I think you've done a really good job of kind of grabbing bits and pieces from all over to make this holistic picture of where we are, especially in the year of 2017, which is when you sealed it. So when you were thinking long and hard, because this took a long time to gather the items that you wanted to put in there, what motivated you? Why did you choose certain things? I like that you had your daughter contribute something, your wife contribute something, but what made you feel that what you put into it was so important, that was worth while taking space in a time capsule, because I know a lot of people struggle with being selective and using the space to their advantage, because some time capsules are pretty small. I see yours is bigger, but what made you kind of decide what to put in there?
Well, there were definitely constraints in the physical size of the time capsules. And by the way, for the listeners, I created not just one, but two, and they're roughly a cubic foot in size, and they were made from aircraft grade aluminum. Again, Corey Johnson, I was really impressed with the fact that he chose to use military grade aluminum and had it welded together. So I taught myself how to braze aluminum, and I brazed these into a box. Each one was a box about a foot cube, and it had a removable top that was secured to the top with 24 stainless steel screws, and then it was all sealed and welded, and it was so we had a very definite constraint on size and what I could include. And so I started making a list of items and went through it, ran it by my siblings and friends, and we just kind of culled it down until it got down to a list of artifacts that could fit in both time capsules, and both of them were crammed full. I mean, I think when we weighed them, and each one weighed about 35 pounds. So we had about, including the weight of the time capsules themselves, about 70 pounds of artifacts that were entombed.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is there anything that someone wanted to kind of throw in there that you were like, absolutely not, we are not doing that? Because, when it is a family project, everyone has their own opinions. You get some conflict in there with what people deem, worth saving for 500 years. So any clashes that you guys had when putting these together?
Well, I don't remember any clashes. I think most everything that everybody suggested or recommended was included. I'm trying to think really hard, and I can't think of anything major that was suggested that we didn't get to include.
Yeah,
I'm really glad we went with two time capsules, though, because with one we would have really had to whittle things down, and we would have had to exclude things that people wanted to include.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I say that because Corey told me, he did the survey, and someone told him to put a cast skillet in there to represent that Southern culture and the food. So I don't think he ever put that in there, but he said it was a good suggestion. So I was thinking lines of that.
That would take up a lot of space. And I can understand why he didn't include it.
Yeah. Well, I really want to pull up. So I was looking at the videos that you had. I want to pull up this because I don't quite know what's going on here. It looks really cool, but feel free to kind of talk us through.
Okay.
A video of this huge box that he has. It looks like he's sucking the air out of it, but
Michael, well, it's again. I was really impressed with Corey because what you see there is we're filling the time capsule with argon gas. Argon is an inert gas. It's heavier than air, so it sinks to the bottom. And as you basically think of it as filling that box up with water, only it's a gas. Argon displaces all the air, and so you end up with nothing but argon inside the time capsule. And so the thought is that argon will kill any insects or anything that might be left over inside the time capsule, or any microbes. And so that's why we evacuated both time capsules with argon. And then we also evacuated the cavity in which the time capsules were placed. So I probably need to talk a little bit more about that too. The actual how we didn't bury these in the ground. We actually built a structure made up of steel reinforced concrete. And
I was going to bring it up too, because there's a video. I'll see if it plays, but I don't think it will. But it's a video of you lowering the time capsule into what looks like this pyramid.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we built a pyramid to house the time capsules. Yeah. And the pyramid is about 1 meter square at the base, and the base is concrete. It's steel reinforced concrete, and it's buried about 2 feet in the ground. And inside that concrete base, there's a cavity that contains the time capsules. And you can see in this video that my daughter and her friend Ashton are playing around the opening where the time capsules go.
Yeah.
And so the base is about 2,800 pounds. So and we poured that in place. The concrete was poured in place. And then the capstone is also made out of steel reinforced concrete. And that was also poured in place. And then we included lifting eyes on that capstone so that we could remove it with a large piece of equipment like a crane. Yeah. And I had to rent this crane on Eclipse Day to remove the cap so that we could entomb the capsule, the aluminum time capsules inside the pyramid.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting about the design is that the opening, the cavity in the base is actually above ground. So the top of the base is actually convex, and then the cap stone that fits down over it is concave, and they made up perfectly because the concrete cap was poured on top of the base, so that it makes a perfect fit.
Yeah.
And so on Eclipse Day, when we entombed the time capsules, we removed the cap and then placed the time capsules with the artifacts inside into the cavity. Then we evacuated that cavity with argon gas again, and then to displace all the air. And then we placed the capstone back on top, and that was more or less complete at that point.
Yeah. I have, a video of you guys lowering it into the ground. Clearly, you've done your due diligence with making sure that, one, it is safe and protected with all the steps that you took, but also that it is identifiable. So for those of our listeners who can't see the video, I will say that it looks like a tiny little Egyptian pyramid that's
well,
black.
It's interesting you mentioned the Egyptian because it's not by accident. I intentionally designed the cap to look like the Great Pyramid in Giza. I've always had a fascination with all things Egyptian, and the angle of the sides of the cap of the pyramid matched the Great Pyramid at Giza. So it was intentional, and I wanted to create something that was beautiful, something that was artistic, something that people would look at and appreciate rather than try to vandalize.
Yeah.
Because I recognize that over the centuries, the 500 years, 494 years to be exact from now, there's a very good chance people are going to try to vandalize this thing, and they're going to have to want to get into it very badly because the capstone is 1,400 pounds, half-inch reinforcing steel. It's not going to be easy to get off.
Like that.
And yes, so that's the finished product there. So 2 feet of that is actually buried underground. You can't see it in that picture, but it's kind of like a lawn sculpture. It's like a piece of art in our backyard, and that gives you an idea of scale. That's my daughter kind of playing on top of it. And we have a bronze plaque on the side that says the date of entombment, the date to be opened, and then who we are, our names on it. So
yeah. Michael, I honestly think this is one of the most beautiful time capsules I've ever seen. The thought and care that you put into it is just mind-blowing. And I love, what is this, the cake to celebrate that you guys did this?
That was my wife's idea. Yeah, she had that cake made as just to eat during the eclipse party.
Yeah, I love the saying that intellectual curiosity is timeless. I think
that was my sister Patty's contribution. She's a teacher, and I think that was her quote. It's appropriate, I think, for her.
Yeah. Do you think, because she's a teacher, she'd ever want to do this with her students? Because one of our time capsule guests was a teacher in Alabama who did this with her class when they experienced COVID and had to stay at home with the masks and kind of this historical COVID time capsule.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think she's a science teacher, so it would definitely be a great idea to keep to engage the students, I think.
Yeah, I have all these videos I was playing. I wanted to play. Yeah, if for those of you who can see the video, they've made a really amazing time capsule that is kind of half above ground and half below it. So it's kind of only the tip of the iceberg, right, when you see it from the outside.
Yeah, and as Corey pointed out, I keep referring back to the podcast. The enemy of all time capsules is water. So, and you don't want to bury them in the ground if you can help it. So, I know for a fact that this cavity in the pyramid is waterproof because it filled up with water and I had to drain it out. So
Oh, wow.
it holds water, and so I guess consequently it's going to keep water out as well.
Yeah.
And it's I it's not just buried in the ground. There's 4 3/4 inch by 3 foot long steel rods that go 5 feet into the ground.
Wow.
So I think you'd have to have a pretty sizable piece of equipment to rip this thing out of the ground, or to move it, or to remove the cap off of it. So I built it to last, and I think realistically, I think there's about a 1% chance that it'll last until 2505. But I built it the best I could, and we'll hope for the best.
No, yeah, the craftsmanship is really impressive. I think that it'll at least last for 200 years. I mean, it has to, but when it's there, so explain, where exactly is this? It's in your backyard, you said?
It's in our backyard toward one side. It's kind of near the property line. And what's cool about it is it's visible from space. If you look it up on Google Maps, if you go to the satellite view, you can actually see there's a 1 meter square black square in our backyard, and that's the time capsule pyramid.
So that's really cool. I haven't checked it out. I definitely will. So does that give you also the GPS coordinates? I know a lot of our past guests have
Well, I have the GPS coordinates, and I submitted them to the International Time Capsule Society. I'm not quite sure why they didn't post them on that page, but I do have the exact latitude and longitude.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, because a lot of physical time capsules, 80 to 90% are actually lost when they bury them. They're definitely not buried as secure as this. Just think friends getting together and burying something in the ground, the water moving it, many different ways. Try to retrieve it and look for it years later, it's no longer there. So how are you ensuring that, this time capsule is not forgotten, and that your descendants will be able to find it when they want to, if you've told people about this?
Well, like I said, I wanted to make it a work of art, kind of something that was beautiful that people wanted to preserve. I think and I wanted it to be visible to it. I didn't want to bury it in the ground and have it be lost, like you said, like most time capsules are. I read a lot, did a lot of research, and tried to avoid the pitfalls that a lot of time capsules suffer from. And I just, I tried to apply everything that I learned through the research into our time capsule. And like I said, I think there's maybe a 1% chance it'll survive. One of the things I did do was, I don't know if you noticed, the color of it is black. It's black because I gave it a granite skin, and granite specifically, I wanted to make it white, but it's very hard to find white granite. And the other option would have been to use white marble, similar to what I think the Great Pyramid in Giza used for its outer skin. But marble is a very soft soft material, as opposed to granite. I don't know if you ever go to a cemetery, but all the tombstones that you see in a cemetery that are made of granite, that are 100 years old, look like they were installed yesterday. They just don't wear. Yeah. So that was one of the things I tried to do was I gave it a granite skin to protect the concrete underneath, and it's holding up surprisingly well. It's 4 years old right now, 5 years almost, and it's holding up very well. But there's I think the fact that it's visible above ground helps, but it could also be a hindrance. I think, the pyramids were vandalized probably within the first 100 years. So I think that's probably the biggest threat is vandals that might try to, get into it or attack it or damage it or whatever.
Yeah. Well, let's hope not. I do think it's very beautiful. And I noticed actually that granite, because the tombstones in cemeteries, the nicest ones that look brand new have that same finish. So I was going to ask you about that. So it's funny you brought that up. But what made you decide to even put a finish on it? I know a lot of people would have just stuck with the cement. And I have to say, if I was someone, roaming around and I saw this, I would think that an architect created it. So what made you just choose these really intricate details that have set it apart from all the other time capsules I've talked about on my podcast?
Well, there is a pyramid shaped time capsule up in, I think it's Iowa, that a guy built, and he's actually has an automobile inside of it, if I'm not mistaken. And I think his is just raw concrete. But I think the granite skin is entirely because of my interest in family history. I visited a lot of cemeteries, researching family and descendants, and it all ties back. I just remember every time I run across a granite tombstone, it looks flawless, and even if it's 100 years old. So I just deduced that giving the pyramid a granite skin would help preserve it.
Yeah. No, it looks really amazing. And so you've definitely put a lot of research into the contents, and then you've also put a ton of research into, what you're actually storing these contents in. So would you say time capsules are a useful way of preserving history? Do you think if someone stumbled across this and opened it, they would understand what 2017 was like for us? Walk me through your thought process on that.
I think it is. I think it's one way to preserve history. It's probably about as good as any. I've had, I think about that a lot because of my interest in family history and trying to preserve things, and like the database, the family history database that my cousin Steve and I started back in 1994. I still maintain that today. It's 27 years old.
Oh wow! What's
And
it called?
so it's software. It's Family Tree Maker. It's an old software. I'm not even sure if it's still in existence, but it takes a lot of diligence to maintain it and transfer it to new media, new computers, and so it's something I'm very interested in preserving, which helps, I guess. But preserving data long term is it's a challenge, and I think time capsules are as good a way as any to communicate to the future.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely know how challenging it is because of, physical rot with the physical time capsules, but also data rot with, the USBs, the hard drives that we have. We're constantly seeing data start to decay over time, especially at that 10-year mark. So what have you done, like anything special again for maybe people that just joined, since this is a live podcast? Have you done anything special to ensure that yours will survive to its opening date? Obviously, we have been super confident the opening date is quite a long time, but again, just because everything is so susceptible to data rot, and as you've said, it's very challenging to preserve history.
I did do some things like Corey again. I was really impressed. I vacuum sealed everything in archival plastic bags. I also printed everything, a fair amount of stuff on paper, acid-free paper. That's important. I also, again, tried to pass along anything I thought might be required to access the digital media that I included in the time capsule. So those are some of the key things, I think.
Yeah. I feel like you and Corey were probably researching on the same platform because you guys have done your due diligence doing these. I'm really impressed by it. And, hopefully people do stumble upon them and they open it. But when they do, because, it's your backyard right now, so you'll see if someone's kind of going through. But in 100 years' time, what do you think the world will be like when someone's opening up this time capsule?
Well, when I started thinking about the time frame, the 500 years, I thought backwards in time, and it brought me back to the Renaissance. So I tried to imagine what would it be like if you transplanted somebody from the Renaissance to today, 500 years from then to now. And I think they would be as wide-eyed and as mystified by everything today as we will be if we could transplant ourselves 500 years into the future. I think if we could somehow magically time travel to 2505, we would think their technology was like magic to us. Just like the people from the Renaissance would think things today would be magic. So I think it's just about impossible to imagine what society and technology will be like in 500 years.
Yeah, it is a broad question, but what about like the future technology of time capsules more specifically, if we want to narrow it down?
Well, I had an idea for actually starting a company where, I thought it would be a cool idea to where you could start a company and for a small fee, people could pay to place a time capsule in a plot of land. similar to like a cemetery, only for time capsules. And the company would take care of, encapsulating everything, and then, keeping track of it and so forth. And I don't know, that's one way. I don't know if it has much merit or not, but that's one idea I had.
Yeah. Do you think that the future of time capsules could be, strictly digital? I don't know if you're a sci-fi person. A lot of our community members are, but
Big
if
sci-fi fan, yes.
what is really okay? If you've seen Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, have you seen
Yes.
that one?
Oh yeah, a couple times.
Yeah, so I actually just watched it again the other weekend, but the scene where he comes back from the planet, where time is definitely sped up a little bit more than on Earth, and he's missed his children growing up throughout their whole lives. But while he was away, they left him videos, as they went through life's milestone events, and even on the normal days, capturing the mundane of their life.
Sure.
I feel like personally, that's what the future is going to be of time capsules. It's going to be just pure video of us talking to our ancestors. I don't know if I'm alone in this belief. So what do you think? Especially if you've seen the movie, that's great.
It's possible. I mean, I think from my experience with family history research, I know that printed material lasts a long time. I've got photographs that are well over 100 years old, a lot of documents that are well over 100 years old, and so I, purposely included a lot of printed material, as well as printed photographs in the time capsules, just for that reason.
Yeah. So you're more of the physical asset. You think it's going to stick that way, or would you just like it to stick that way because you're used
Well, I mean, I wouldn't, I like your idea. I think it would be great if we could pass along videos, hundreds of years into the future. I just, know from the technology changes extremely rapidly. And I think we'll be lucky if MP3 files will be playable in
Yeah.
50 years, for example. I mean, it changes so rapidly, and it's very difficult to preserve digital media for a long period of time.
Yeah. Technological obsolescence will definitely be a huge challenge when they pivot into that market. But I do feel like that would be cool because I would love if I was, opening your time capsule in 500 years to see you on the other end of a screen explaining everything in the time capsule, why you chose to put it in there, and just give me more context because, who knows in the future if we're going to be able to understand what's even in there. Especially when I open up, the crude oil, I'm like, what on earth is this? This is crazy. So, that would be good to get some context and some human element to it. I know Corey, a few other people that we interviewed had, directions on their plaques and some sort of dialogue with the future, who opens it. But I think that you've done a good job giving them some sort of instructions, especially with the USB technology, as you've explained.
Well, there's a plaque on the outside, a bronze plaque. Bronze lasts a long time, so it says what it is. So if somebody honors the plaque and the intent of the time capsule and waits until 2505, they'll be able to open it and see everything that's inside.
Yeah, no, of course. And also, when you said you had photos that were over 100 years old, I've never held a photo over 100 years old. So, what kind of characteristics set them apart? I know over time, a photo turns brown, the edges curl up, they show obvious signs of wear and tear and time, which is inevitable for the aging. But what does an 100-year-old picture look like? Do you have that as a prop, or can you explain it to our audience members?
Well, a lot of them are, they're stored in these old kind of like cardboard things that they fold together, like a trifold. And so I think that helps a lot because it keeps light off of the photographs. I think light degrades, the UV light degrades photographs. So a lot of these photos are stored that way that I have that are well over 100 years old. Some of them, most of them are black and white. I've learned through research on the time capsule that color photos don't last very long. So
Oh.
most of the ones that I have that are over 100 years old are all black and white, of course. And the newer ones that are color, they are starting to degrade, but
Already?
already, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Some of my photos, obviously mine are all in color.
Well, I think I'm a little bit older than you. I didn't mention it at the beginning. I'm
Ah,
59 years old, so I'm a little bit older than you, I'm afraid.
well, I mean, my grandma has a lot of black and white photos too, and they've gone very, very blurry. So it's almost like you just see the outline of, she had her great grandfather's photos from when he was in a war. So in his uniform, he looks pretty sharp, but the edges have just blurred. It's gotten a little hazy, and it makes me think it definitely has to do with how you store it with the light. She definitely has not properly stored her images, I think. But what would be a good way for the listeners to store their photos to make sure that they can be like you and have ones that are over 100 years old?
Hmm. Well, I'm no professional archivist, strictly amateur, but I would say uh, store things in archival bags for one thing.
Mm.
Store them away from light. Store them in cool temperatures. Try not to expose them to large changes in temperature or humidity. Um, those are probably some good recommendations.
Yeah. And with that time capsule, you just brought up a good point. Does cement allow the contents to be climate controlled? Is it cooling, especially when, we approach the summer days? It's
Well,
sweltering.
that's one of the things I worried about when I put the black granite skin on it, because as you know, black absorbs infrared light, and the temperature when you touch the time capsule when on a sunny day, it's pretty hot. But I think the concrete is thick enough, and it's massive enough that I hope that the cavity with the time capsules inside stays relatively cool.
Yeah.
Because most of it is below ground. The opening is about a foot above ground. So I hope that it's massive enough that the sun doesn't heat up the entire concrete structure to any dangerous levels that's going to damage the artifacts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure with cement. Obviously, I've never built a time capsule like this before. You're giving me a lot of ideas, but for our listeners who are new to time capsules, they're new to family history, and they want to get involved and make their own. What is some advice for a newbie? Obviously, they probably are not at your level, but they want to get started. So, how do they dip their toes in the water of time capsules?
Well, have fun with it. My family, my wife and daughter and I had a blast doing this. It was very much a family project, and my wife, I think, grew impatient with me at times because, we would spend just a ridiculous number of hours working on it. But I would say, first and foremost, water is the enemy of all time capsules. If you can avoid putting your time capsule on the ground, don't put it in the ground, because water is the enemy of all time capsules. That's the biggest advice I can give. But have fun with it. Do the research. Think about what the people that are going to open it would like to see and what they would find interesting. That's about the only recommendations I can make.
And after this experience, could you see yourself making more time capsules in the future? I know a lot of people get addicted to making them, especially when we have, these big lifestone events, like when your daughter gets married, for example. Do you think you'd want to put a time capsule together for her?
And no, I think one and done for me. That was a significant effort. I wrapped myself around that project for all of 2017, and it was an expensive little project too. I think we spent about $3,000 on it, and
Oh, wow. Okay.
so it's one and done for me. I'm not going to do any more time capsules.
Yeah, this is definitely an experience level for everyone listening. But any last parting words, Michael, before we depart today?
No, I appreciate you having me on. It was fun talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. For anyone interested, I'm going to get more information. I would love to learn a little bit more about your company. I want to do my own researching. Is it still active? Can I find things about it online? You've just printed all of Wikipedia in the time capsule, so I'm wondering if your company's on Wikipedia.
No, I don't have a company. What do you? I'm not sure
The,
what
fam-
you're asking.
the family history database that you said you started.
Oh, that one. Well, it's just a database. The software was commercial software that you could purchase. Um, I can email it to you if you'd like. I can email you information on that.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, I just like to include everything about our guests in there. We have people that are really curious about it. So I'm going to include some pictures when we post this, but again, Michael, thank you so much. Beautiful time capsule, a lot of meaning, and I'm really excited that we have you registered in the International Time Capsule Society.
All right, thank you.
Okay, have a good one.
Bye.
Okay, guys, that was Michael. He joined us today. Really cool guest. He put a lot of thought into his time capsule. For those of you who are just starting time capsules, definitely do something a little bit more cost friendly. He said he spent around $3K on his, but totally worth it in my opinion. And I think that the materials he used will be able to withstand the test of time. Not sure about 500 years, but I could definitely see it lasting at least 100 years. So the contents are more up in the air. We'll see what lasts and what doesn't. But again, thank you guys so much for joining the Hidden World of Time Capsules. Next week we will have someone special as always, and we'll be discussing yet another time capsule, another story, and another way to transform your family history. So thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you guys very, very soon.